We're very close to the shores of the lake, and we will have soon some time to walk inside the chapel, also to visit the shores of the lake here. This is very authentic because here, on the shores of the lake, again, this is where the disciples came to shores after their casting their nets on the other side and caught so many fish that remember that the boat almost sank. And then they grill fish together in Mensa Christi. Now this church is built over the rock of Mensa Christi, where Jesus prepares some fire, and where later on, after they realize that the disciples and Peter realized that this is Christ, for them it was unexpected because this was after the crucifixion and resurrection. And then they saw Jesus here. Jesus asked St. Peter, "Do you love me 3 times?" And then you can see the statue just over there. You can see Jesus blessing St. Peter and telling him, "Feed my lamb." This is also the other name of this church called the primacy, St. Peter's primacy. Jesus received the primacy twice. Once when Jesus, before the resurrection, met Peter in Caesarea of Philippi, which is about 2 hours drive from here up north, and said, "On this rock I will build my church." And the second was here after the resurrection, "Feed my sheep, feed my lamb." This is where it took place. So in this area, what you will see later on, we're just waiting for Msgr. Maybe he's coming, I don't know, we'll see in a minute.
Remember that one day, the disciples were sailing and they saw a figure from afar, white figure. And the disciples thought it was a ghost. "It's a ghost," they said. So beside it's a goose. And then they realized it was not a ghost, it was Jesus. So they were all amazed and surprised. And so, "It's Jesus walking on water," they said. And then Peter, alam mo si Peter, sa lawayo rin ng maray. Sabi ni Peter, "Lord, let me also walk in water." And so Jesus said, come Peter." So, like the good Peter, he wanted to walk on water and started sinking because he had no trust in God. He had no faith. I keep repeating on this. Faith. Faith in God, trust in God. We are here on this table where one of the few times, well, it was difficult for the apostles to recognize Jesus after the resurrection. Some of them still doubted that Jesus had risen from the dead. It was difficult to understand. Remember, these are fishermen. These were not, tested Christians or followers of Jesus. So that one day, Jesus appeared while they were gathered here, and Jesus said, "Do you have bread?" They still did not recognize Jesus. "You have bread?" Fish here, they started to, barbecue sila. And then, when they started eating, that was the time that they recognized Jesus. What things happen when we celebrate Mass? What things are revealed to us when we are with Jesus at Mass? I kept telling you, love the Mass. When you receive communion, it is the body of Christ that becomes part of you. It is the blood of Christ that runs through your veins. You married people, you cannot turn away from each other until you turn away from God. So that for you, one of the, I know some of you are very faithful to your Sunday Mass. But then if there is one thing that you can learn from this pilgrimage. It's Sunday Mass together, husband and wife. Sunday Mass together and no Mass without communion. There's another incident in the life of Peter and the disciples of Christ after the resurrection. Remember that Peter denied Jesus 3 times. I think on Good Friday we're going to a place where Jesus denied, where Peter denied Jesus 3 times. The Gallicanto. It's called Gallicanto, where the cock, you know. It was already revealed to Peter before the cock crows. You have already denied me 3 times. He said, no, Lord, I will go with you until then, wherever you are then. The first thing he did after they arrested Jesus was to deny Jesus. But anyway, after the resurrection, Jesus still wanted to test the faith of Peter. And one day he said, Peter, do you love me? And Peter said, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus said, feed my lambs. The second time, maybe Jesus wanted to tell Peter, Peter, 3 times you denied me, 3 times I'm going to ask you, Peter, do you love me? And then Peter said, Lord, you know that I love you. Feed my lambs. Second time. And the third time he said, Jesus asked Peter again, Peter, do you love me? Peter must have been irritated a little. He must have been a little, you know. Can you imagine Jesus asking him 3 times, do you love me? And so Peter, maybe in a loud voice, he said, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. This is a very interesting conversation. You love me, Peter, serve my people. You love me, Peter, serve other people. You love God? You cannot say you love God and you do nothing for other people. There is no such thing as an isolated Christian. You only love God when you love your neighbor. God is in your neighbor. One day, when we appear before the judgment seat of God, we all must return to God one day. We all must appear before the white throne of God one day. And God will answer us only one question. He will not ask us how many times you went to church, how many novenas you prayed. He will ask us one and only question. When I was hungry, when I was thirsty, when I was in prison, when I was sick, when I was taking drugs, where were you? Maybe he will say to one of you parents, when I was hungry, you nursed me. When I was distressed, you comforted me. Maybe your parents, you mothers will be shocked and say, when, Lord, did I see you thirsty? When did I nurse you, Lord? And the Lord will say, Mama, as long as you did it to one of these, your babies, your little babies, you did it to me. And imagine a person who commits abortion, how he can answer the Lord one day. When I was in your womb as a little child, you killed me. When, Lord, did I kill you? When, Lord, did I see you in my womb? When I was a little baby in your womb. Because as long as you did it to one of these, my list, you have done it to me. During this pilgrimage, try to focus on things you do not do more on things that you have failed to do. You go to mass, you go to confession, you do this and you do that. What are the things you have not done for your family, for your children, for a friend? How many times have I met people with a co-employee, with a friend going through some very difficult problems? And I would say, why don't you talk to her about her problem? Why don't you try to help her? And they would tell me, Father, when it comes to her problems, hands up ako. That's her personal problem. When it comes to her relationship with my boss, that's her problem. What kind of a friend are you? So, spend again some moments here in this beautiful place where the Lord revealed himself to the apostles during a meal. And ask yourselves, when I have a problem, when I'm going through a crisis, do I use the Mass as a way of reaching out to the Lord? Is the Mass the be-all, the end-all of my life? Again and again I say, do not be afraid to receive communion. The Mass is not a reward for goodness. One day I asked my doctor, a very famous cardiologist, Dr. Caria. I said, Doc, he's a Bicolano from Bonga. Doc, I'm tired of these medicines. It's very expensive. When do I stop taking my medicines? You know what he said? He also has a bypass operation. He said, Father, thank God there is medicine. We are still alive. The moment we stop taking our medicines, we are dead. So when I was sleeping this time, I asked Dr. Kale, said, do you have anything to tell me, any warning, anything? You know what he said? Just bring your medicines. During that opening Mass, I told you that I wanted to be sure that you would allow me to come. He said, anyway, I have 4 doctors in the group and 2 registered nurses. I did not tell him that the doctors with me are all OB-GYNs and pediatrician and a neuro. So, but anyway, we cannot survive when we get to our age, senior age. Di ko magparangisda, puro ka mo magurang. Pagurang nindo, all you do after meal is to try to count or select. Ano yung kita naman sa inomong book? When you come to our age, you cannot survive without medicine. Communion is a medicine for sickness, spiritual sickness. How can you survive in your spiritual life without Holy Communion? That is the only food and medicine for our souls. So, love the Mass, love Holy Communion. Don't worry about daily Masses, that's pure devotion. Just Sunday Mass, and no Mass without communion.
Wait.
Hi, we're in the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus made most of his miracles during his ministry, public ministry. Oh, man, okay?
Amen! Amen!
Amen to that.
May sense mo?